Well, hey, Stacey, welcome back to another episode of Slightly Filtered.
Hi, Jason. And I'm also calling it slightly broken because sometimes I get up in the morning and I wonder what fresh, what my body's going to tell me that
It just
is.
doesn't work, huh?
No. Somebody said, we think when we're younger, we think in our 40s and 50s, we're going to have it all together and we're going to know where we're going and what we're doing. And then we get to 60 and 60-ish, and we finally figure it out. We know what we're doing. We don't put up with anything. And then our bodies start falling apart.
Oh, yeah.
So it's kind of crazy. But we don't want to talk about bodies
Well,
because
I do want to preface something first, real quick. If you're watching the show and all of a sudden I magically disappear, it's because Frontier Communications is coming to install fiber today.
Can't miss that.
So what'll happen is the phone will ring and I'll disappear.
And it won't be
Like
because
that.
I just made him,
Cinema magic.
I did my magic and made him go away.
Yeah, you witch.
Which I am happy that we're having Robin Roberts. I've tried,
Hi,
for
Robin.
months to,
Thank
to
you.
I
Thank
mean,
you.
it was really, I know you're so busy, so coordinating, with you to get you here. I know that was a hassle. And even after this show, you've got something that comes up. So I really appreciate you taking the time to come down here because I want to talk about behavioral health in Mona County and what is going on there. And I got to say, I'm on the advisory board and I'm a newbie on the advisory board. So I mostly just listen, to what's going on right now. But I am in awe of everything that you have going on. Until I was on this board, I had no idea, what is going on. So if you can explain to us what it is that you do and what it is your department does for Mona County.
Sure, I'll give it a good shot. So I am the director of the behavioral health department for Mono County, and there are 58 counties in the state of California, as you may know, and all of them have a publicly funded mental health and substance use disorder programs. And in Mono, and most counties have a variety of different entities that they can contract services out to. In Mono County, we are the one-stop shop because we're a very remote frontier county. And so we do literally everything there. And so it can be, let's see, I'm going to definitely forget some things. It's not intentional. It's just a lot, as you said. So we're funded primarily by the state and the federal government. We have a few grants. We're not connected to the Mono County General Fund. So that's one way of saying to you that the state of California, for reasons that perplex me, is highly, highly, highly regulatory in terms of trying to protect the dollar and the person. And so, which I fully agree with, you should protect our tax dollar and, of course, protect people. What it means for a very small county like Mono County is we have to meet all of the regulations and all of the mandates and all of the audits that we have in a single year. And so we have a staff that is partly administrative, and then we have a staff that's partly programmatic, and then we have a staff that's clinical.
Okay, so administrative mean they make sure that you guys are meeting all the regulations.
Oh, yeah.
And then the clinical is the people that work with the public.
Correct. They're either mental health clinicians or case managers, and they work with people who enter our system for mental health reasons, or they're our substance use disorder team, and they work with people who either are mandated to services like for the DUI program or drug diversion if somebody were to get arrested for drugs, although that's less and less happening because of changes at the state level. And then they also provide services to people who are looking for drug and alcohol services.
And who's the other part? You said administrative, clinical, and...
Then we have our programs that is some of what you hear about at the advisory committee, where we provide different community programs to any community member that would like to attend in Chalfont, Benton, Lee Vining, Bridgeport, Walker, Colville, and Mammoth. I think that's all of them. At June Lake as well. So what we believe is that humans are increasingly lonely, and that connection is the biggest healer that all of us have to contribute, all of us need and are hungry for. And so we create community events so that people have a place to connect with whomever. They can connect with staff if they would like to, or they can connect with each other, or they can just come and just do whatever the activity might be and not connect with anybody if that's what they want, but they can still be around people if they would like to be. And so our community programs are driven by each community. Each community asks for something slightly different because they're different. And then we try to tweak that the best that we can in order to give people opportunities to do things with adults and kids, safe, no alcohol or drugs are allowed kind of experience. And it's always at the same time at a certain day. Of course, weather will get in the way, and things will get in the way, as we all know. But
people don't understand
reliably.
it. They think social media connects us, but really it keeps us apart.
Very much.
And we need that physical
Very much.
connectivity. It's important.
Yeah, and I think
I think that's affected a lot of people. I think that's why we have a
Absolutely.
lot of mental health issues these days.
absolutely.
Social media.
Yeah, and I think it's well, I mean, I don't
Isolation.
isolation and just disconnection. I think that more and more we're not very good listeners. So people will do a thing where you ask somebody how they are and they give you an answer. They say, "Oh, I'm fine, except my dog has diarrhea or whatever." And then we immediately jump in. Sorry about that. Immediately jump in with, "Oh yeah, when my dog," and then we leave that person in the dust, so to speak. So one of the things we've been talking about is how do we help reach in? How do we teach people to just listen a little bit better so that there's some you don't have to listen to a person's life story if you don't want to, but there's just a little bit more connection there.
But don't you think that, I mean, part of me, I understand what you're saying about it, but when they do bring up, don't you think they're trying to empathize in those situations when they're saying that, but then being misguided as well?
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't think it's
Not
out of
malicious,
malice
yeah.
for sure. No, never. Not at
So
all.
where's the line there?
Well, I think it's hunger versus hunger, right? Like, so if you ask me a question about how I'm doing and I take the risk to tell you a little bit more than I'm fine and move on, right?
Right.
And then you start talking about your own experience before I have the opportunity to tell you a little bit more about mine, then I feel like now I'm listening to you when you actually ask me. So there's an exchange discrepancy, shall we call it.
I think it's
that.
we've lost the ability to read each other's cues. I think, and a lot of it has to do with social media, because I am sometimes aware, like I'm doing it right now. I am sometimes aware that I will try and share a story when I'm supposed to be listening to somebody else. And I have had to put myself in a place where I'm thinking to myself, okay, this isn't about me. This person needs to vent. This person needs to share. And I'm good. I don't need to share, but I need to listen right now. And you're absolutely 100%. We've forgotten the art of listening.
Don't know if we've forgotten so much. I think part of it is teaching, because I remember back in the 80s, we were taught to try to do that. So that we were relating with them and making the experiences personal between the two. And I know that I overdo that. I know that I'm guilty of it.
I also wonder, I just recently came back from Southern California for a visit, and I'm not out in the world a ton here anyway, but I noticed that there were families at tables at restaurants where everyone was on their phone at the same time. So you can look at that and go, "Ugh, what's wrong with those people?" or "What's happening?" What you lose when you do that is the nuance of just being a little bit bored, perhaps, or a little bit awkward, and that you don't have something that you can just grab and take care of that anxiety. You have to kind of reach out a little bit. That, to me, is more what we're missing, is kind of what you're saying, right? Where we don't necessarily know how to be with another person and just be there,
with another person.
because we're so used to the distraction now, and it's common.
What's crazy is they'll be in the same room texting each other.
I know.
That's crazy. So
I have done that in my life, I will say.
So how do you, okay. So Robin, what kind of programs, or how does Mono County Behavioral Health try to bring the community together? And like we said, everybody is on their phones, and that is separating us more than anything.
So we promote as many community events as we can. To go back to your original question about what it is we do, in our department, we have a program called Harm Reduction, and that is where the idea around interfacing with somebody who uses drugs or alcohol is that we want them to be safe, we want them to stay alive, and we want them to come back. And when I was first a therapist in the early 80s, there was a demarcation around if somebody was using drugs or alcohol, we weren't ethically allowed to see them for mental health services. And so that never made sense to me. That
Why?
First of all, we had the idea being that if somebody wasn't, quote, willing or ready, or that, there's a lot of moralism around drugs and alcohol in this culture. And so when I came from Santa Cruz, California, and I worked then at what was then called the Needle Exchange. And that's where I learned that the way for people to get connected to services typically was by just treating them with dignity and respect, not expecting them to be abstinent, not even having that be on the table. And that if they needed a sandwich, you got them a sandwich. If they needed help with abscesses, you figured out a way to help them with that. They needed a glass of water, whatever the things were. And that really taught me a lot about just being where people are, giving them what they need in that moment of where they are, because they know what they need. And then from there, a relationship gets built. And through that relationship, then they may decide that they want to be in recovery of some sort or another. And so when I came to Mono County with that experience, which was very powerful for me, I made some decisions, not just all by myself, but then trying to figure out what would it be like to promote a harm reduction model in a county government system. And at that time, we weren't allowed to use the words harm reduction. We could only talk about abstinence. And that's from the just say no era. I mean, what will happen, is something will happen, a mandate will happen at the federal level typically, and then it trickles down to everyone, including a small little county like Mono, and then you're stuck under it for decades. And so, why aren't we able to say harm reduction? And you can provide services to people to have them stay alive, safe, and come back without calling it that. And so that's what we just started to do. We shifted away from abstinence only to making a place for people to be able to come to us and get the services that they needed. And then if they decided they wanted to pursue recovery from drugs or whatever, then we can help them with that. So we do that. We do all of the mandated services for DUI, like I had said. We work in the jail. We do all the crisis evaluations for psychiatric crisis, suicide, homicide, or grave disability due to a mental health disorder. We do individual counseling, family counseling. We work in the schools. I know there's more. I'll probably think of it as I'm going. But I also want to just make sure an administrative staff is what supports a county's ability to do all of that work out in the public. And so our administrative staff, especially our front office, they're the hub, right? They talk to every single person that calls or emails or texts us. And so everyone in our department is equally important to making sure that we're able to provide what we need and what the community may want, and also what people may need in terms of therapeutic services.
So I have a question. So if you mentioned the jail, so if somebody is sent away for a long time and they want to come back, and restart their life again in Mono County, is there a way for the inmate or for the prison or whatever to get in touch with the county and start I don't want to say forming a place for the person, but getting the person ready to just integrate into the community?
That's a very good question. So I'll give you the slightly complicated answer, which is there are many systems involved with somebody who's incarcerated, whether they're incarcerated at federal level, state level, or county level, right? And all of those entities have their own rules and regulations, and they don't necessarily talk to any other entity. And so there's a lot of cracks that people who are released, especially if they've had a long sentence, they can be released from, let's say, Idaho, and then they want to come back to Mono County because that's their home county, let's say. So that would be a parole issue, which is then would get housed under potentially probation. Then maybe we'll hear about it, maybe we won't. We don't tend to have prisons reach out to us directly when people are going to parole back into the county to offer the services that they may or may not have been getting while they were incarcerated. So it's a bit of a crapshoot, basically.
Because I know there's something called the Interstate Compact that the Western states have, to help inmates reintegrate themselves if they're arrested, like you said, in Idaho, and they want to come back to Inyo County or even LA County or San Francisco County.
Right.
How to do that in a safe manner that supports them in a way that they won't go back.
Right.
That kind of thing.
Right. I know more about how it works in the state of California and how it then impacts our particular jail, which, again, like because we're a small county, we have less than 14,000 people, our numbers are always on the, our data sets are very, very, very small compared to a larger small county even. And so we tend to know everybody that's in jail. We tend to know not everybody that's on probation, but anybody that's on probation that might intersect with us. Child welfare, same thing. So we can offer, I think, very comprehensive, mostly crack-free services that way. But that's a product partly of the people that work here and partly of our size is
Right.
that, we just don't have the volume that others have.
Right.
Our caseloads aren't thousands of people, for instance.
Right. And oh my gosh, I can't even imagine. So I have a question. So I'm just going to kind of change tune here a little bit. I want to talk the mobile crisis unit. Can you tell me a little bit more about the mobile crisis unit?
Sure. So in the state of California, there's a new mandate to provide to basically try to get law enforcement out of the center of being the only responders to people who are having a mental health crisis. So if you were to go to an urban area, you very easily could find a person having a mental health crisis. It's relatively obvious, right? They're probably the person standing on the corner screaming and yelling, and they look, from my angle anyway, they look very, very, very distressed. And so for a very long time in the state of California, law enforcement would respond to those calls, sometimes trained, sometimes not, and sometimes successful and sometimes not, in helping that person get to whatever they needed next. So not that long ago, the state decided that all counties were required to do what's called mobile crisis response. What that means in Los Angeles or Orange County or one of the larger counties is that they have vans of people that when there's a call, they just go out onto the street and they help with law enforcement to get that person what they might need. The idea partly is to get them what they need, treat them with dignity and respect, figure out if they can create relationship, and also keep them out of our hospital system and our jail. And I think they've been extremely successful. So in Mono County, we're often asked to do the model that is what we call the LA standard. So Los Angeles has to do this particular thing. And so not every county has to do this particular thing in the way that you do it in LA.
Okay. So
So they created response times and things like that are completely impossible in Mono County.
especially in the winter.
For sure in the winter.
Yeah.
So what we did instead is we worked, Kern County has a model of remote response that they've been doing with their sheriff's department in some of the more remote parts of Kern County, where they go out with an iPad, and then that iPad connects directly to a provider in my department. And then we have the ability to assess that person, triage what's next, and also, again, create relationship and try to handle a way in which they can do services. So in Mono County, starting next week, we'll be doing some trainings with our medics and our sheriff's department. It will be a collaborative amongst our 3 departments. We're going to do a pilot project from June Lake North and basically beta test it before we try to roll it out in a place that has still a few calls, but more calls than you might see, for instance, in the 395 corridor in Mammoth Lakes, California.
So the people who are going to be training this are already working for the county, so to speak, in the sheriff's department or the fire department.
That's the model right now. There are other models where peers are involved with the crisis stabilization.
So peers meaning people who've already
People with lived
passed.
experience.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
And it's very broad what that means.
Right.
I mean, so it may be somebody who's been hospitalized because, one of the things that we deal with a fair bit, mostly people don't understand what we do, I think. And people think we have more powers and power to do the things that they see. So we get calls with regularity from all manner of people who will look at a person and say, that person is very distressed and they're scary. And we can go, yep, that person is very distressed and they, I can see why you might think they're scary. I don't think they would necessarily be scary to me because they're my people,
Right.
And I don't have the power to go just tell that person what to do around their mental health. And this country is very individual rights related. And so in the same way that I can't just show up at your house with a bottle of pills because I think you really would benefit from this particular type of thyroid medication, you'd be like, get away from me. People with mental health disorders feel the same. So we can't just force people to take medication. There's an experience that people have who have psychotic disorders where they do not think there's anything wrong with their brain.
Schizophrenia.
For sure.
Yeah.
Types of bipolar is the same. And so it's alarming to them and often feeds into paranoia if they have it, that somebody is telling them to take this poison in order to, quote, get better when they don't think there's anything wrong. And so I don't have magical powers or potions or dust I can sprinkle on a person to magically get them to decide that they have a psychosis and they need to treat it. The other piece about that is all antipsychotic medications have significant secondary, what we call when you have a
Side effects.
side effect.
Yeah.
Including metabolic disorders like diabetes, like significant heart disease. It can really start to shave off some of your lifespan.
Wow.
So we're asking people to take these meds so that they might feel better or be able to function more, which is not a bad thing, and be less distressed, which is definitely not a bad thing. But it's not like we're giving them a glass of water. We're giving them a medication that also causes these other things to occur.
Right.
And often also makes them feel a little bit like muted or deadened inside potentially, right?
That's what I've heard from people who I know who are bipolar. They don't like the meds because they're like they're flatlined.
Right.
They just they feel nothing.
Right. So if you have a good relationship with somebody who has bipolar 1 or a psychotic disorder, let's say, and you just, again, it's that harm reduction model of, I want to see you, I want you to come back, I want you to be safe, and I want to do whatever I can to keep you safe and alive, right? That's my role in your life. Create a relationship with you with dignity around that. Then over time, and it could be a long time, they will begin to come back. And if they eventually start to feel like they want to do something differently. Like, for instance, a lot of people want to go back to work, but they're just too disorganized and too anxious and they got too much going on in their head to be able to function at a job. And so it'll be a motivator and a driver to go back to work. And then medication would be part of that.
Right.
In the same way it might be for any of us with some other physical thing going on, right? And so then they're more likely and more willing to take medications on their own.
How is your department involved with that? And also, if people, let's say hypothetically, I have a relative who is in a really bad mental state, can I call your office and say, help? What do I do?
Well, so to answer the first question, we have psychiatry. So I should need to say this part, and I feel always mixed about this. I work for the government and I have to follow the rules, right? That's my job. That's my role, even if I don't necessarily agree with them. And what that means is a public mental health system, which Mono County is, can only see people with Medi-Cal, Mono County Medi-Cal. So Medi-Cal in the state of California, if I were to have it and go to San Diego, I always say this and I hope this doesn't happen to me, but if I go to San Diego and break my arm and I have Medi-Cal, I can walk into an urgent care or the emergency department down in San Diego and get treatment. If I have a mental health disorder, I have to only get treatment in my home county.
But that doesn't make any sense.
Welcome to government. I don't know what to say. I agree. But what it means for us is that we're very small, right? And we often have people who have commercial insurance or could pay cash, who want services, and we have to deny them certain types of services because they don't have the Medi-Cal, and that's our mandate. And I could explain to you, it's not that interesting, but any Medi-Cal person we follow them in many, 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 many different ways, data-wise, to make sure that we're protecting that person and giving them the services that we're required to give them.
Wow.
So if a loved one or a friend calls us about a person, obviously we can't tell you, if we can't confirm or deny if we know that person. But we can definitely hear what you have to say or try to help direct you to whatever we might have available that might be useful to you.
Okay. Thank you for that. I wanted to ask you too. I remember from the meeting that there's opportunity for people. You're going to be able to hire people. So can you talk a little bit about?
Sure.
We've got a couple of minutes.
We have a couple wellness centers, and we have community centers, and we do our wellness programs in the communities that I already outlined. And we have some positions available come mid-September where people can come in and if they want to do like a particular type of class for a community, or they have some mental experience with mental health or lived experience and they want to do a peer group, let's say, or, I mean, kind of, we'll entertain almost anything, really, if it's obviously safe and reasonable. And if people want to work in their community, we want to hire people from the community. They have the most impact because I don't live in Chalfont, so I don't know that community. But somebody from Chalfont that might want to do a youth program and hang out with, some 12-year-olds in an afternoon and play games or whatever, and then do some social emotional what's called pro-social, so just some experiences with each other around how to make good decisions and all of that. We would be really happy to have you come talk to us about that.
Are you going to be advertising that or putting it out there?
Yeah, we have to wait till the board adopts our budget, and that will be on I believe it's the 12th of September. Don't quote me on that, but after that date, then we can start our hiring processes. And yes, we will absolutely be putting that out in the public.
Okay. How long have you been with the county?
15 years.
15 years.
Yep.
And what do you do for fun when you're not?
Oh, I have a mess of dogs. I do a lot of walking. I get out. I love this place so much. And
You post some amazing pictures on Facebook. Where are those? Are those just from your yard or?
Some of them, yeah.
I mean, they're just gorgeous.
I mean, I just point and shoot. I mean, it's pretty hard to take a bad picture here, I think. I go out into the wilderness as much as I can. I just love it.
What's your favorite hike in the area?
Recently I went up into the Tioga Pass area.
Oh, okay.
And I didn't see a soul. I saw a lot of mosquitoes, but I did not see any people.
Where
Just off the Saddlebag Road, there's like this little turnoff, and then there's a huge long meadow for a couple miles you can walk up. And
Really?
Yeah.
Before you get to Saddlebag Lake?
Correct.
On the right side or the left side?
The left side if you're going up. I'll draw you a little map. It's my secret spot.
Okay, well then I won't
No,
share
it's
it.
no, it's fine. It's just like I'll go anywhere, really.
And I mean, this is your retirement place when that
I believe so, yeah.
You're not going anywhere.
I'm not planning on it. That last winter, I actually I can do more winters like that. That wasn't that hard.
You live in Crowley, right?
It's the worrying about snow that. Yeah. I mean, I'm sorry. It's the worrying about fire that kind of gets me. Yeah, I live in Crowley, but I live on a non-county road that is a little treacherous, and I used to live in Old Mammoth, and I was super glad I wasn't there for this last winter.
We live in Old Mammoth.
Yeah. It's the winter vortex.
I don't want it. I told my husband, I said, I don't want to be here anymore in the winter. I said, we're not selling the house. I said, but I don't want to be here.
Yeah.
And he, for the first time, actually hired people to help with the snow removal.
Exactly.
And this is a man for 40 years, been doing it by himself. And it was just, and we have another one possibly coming in. And so, Old Mammoth, I know we, see these, I know these new cups we have, see the 7 words we can't say on the air. Those are all the 7 words I feel about this last winter. And I'm not alone. And there was, we're almost out of time, and I just want to talk to you because I know there's a lot of people that have PTSD from this past winter. And
without question.
And I would love to have you back.
I'm happy to come back.
Talk more about that. So
I would be more than happy to come back.
You.
I really enjoy you, and I enjoy this medium. And, the more we can get the word out, the better.
I love it when a plan doesn't come together.